No, okay. Let me be serious for real. Um, I really think I have a theory. Okay, so this RGT85 is going to talk about how this one dude basically was able to get Grand Theft Auto 5 running on a Game Boy. I don't think people understand how huge that is because there's companies that are releasing these high-end Game Boys, like these like $200 and $300 super. I don't know all the brands. I know CNET like reviewed a couple. All I'm saying is think about how huge that is. Because the thing that held the original Game Boy back was the screen. Like the screen sucks. But these new Game Boys are literally going to revolutionize things because think about it. So you could buy the new Game Boy. You don't have to buy the original. You buy the newer one, or like, sorry, the new equivalent that's being produced by a bunch of different companies. Then you just buy this one dude's cartridge that's like a cloud service. Basically, he's offering some sort of cloud service, and there you go. You're playing GT. You're playing Grand Theft Auto 5 on a Game Boy. Like I don't like that is so that's like a if that's not a mic drop, I don't know what is a mic drop. Thank you RGT85. Mic drop, son. Laser. Oh, no, I wanted to there was something I wanted to talk about. No, I don't know what I would. You know what? I actually kind of just. Oh wait, let me play this though. Sorry, let me play the clip. Let me. Excuse me. That's. Sorry. I always forget about the other people. I'm like, yo, let me talk about what I want to talk about, and I'm like, okay, we're done. No, no, let me put the man of the hour on the on the podium, sir.
Game Pass has also emulated this as well with xCloud, but now it seems like it's come to the system that it should have came to originally, and that is the original Game Boy. Basically, there's some guy, his name is Sebastian Stacks, and I'm showing some footage of his video right now, so make sure you guys check out the original video. I'll have a link to it in the description box down below, but he essentially made a Wi-Fi cartridge for his Game Boy because I mean, I guess that's what the streets have been wanting, a Wi-Fi cartridge for the original Game Boy.
Yes.
But this is allowing him to do a bunch of different things. Originally, he just wanted to use it for, like, text messages and stuff. But then he thought, hey, why don't I put...
This is huge. This is so huge. I need to go back to CNET and find those games. Let me look that up.
GTA5 to stream onto this cartridge onto an original Game Boy. Now, this Game Boy isn't modified or hacked or anything like that. It's all actually just running through the cartridge with basically a cloud formulation. There's a lot of science and nonsense behind it. I don't know how it works because I'm an absolute idiot, but he basically has GTA 5 running, well, kind of, via a cloud on an original Game Boy. It has inputs as well, which I don't really understand because there's only 2 buttons on the Game Boy, but yes, now you can tell all your friends that the Grand Theft Auto 5 has finally hit a Nintendo platform, but it's not the Nintendo Switch. It's actually the Game Boy. Obviously, this is not an ideal way to play this game, but I wanted to give this video a little shine and give this dude a little shine because, you know, just the technical know-how you have to have in order to make something like this, you know, a cloud, essentially your own cloud streaming service, when all these other companies, especially, you know, these companies that are working on Nintendo Switch cloud versions of the game can't seem to figure it out. But this dude did. Maybe they need to hire this dude, you know, at these companies that want to do cloud gaming in order to utilize cloud gaming in a good way. But yeah, GTA 5 is on your original Game Boy. You'll never get to play it, but hey, it's an interesting little story. Next up.
Dude, absolutely. That is an absolutely interesting story. Okay, here it is.
Moinsen, this is Sebastian, and here you see me playing GTA 5 on my original, unmodified Game Boy. No clickbait, no video tricks, all documented and open source.
Okay, let's see it. I'm watching it for the first time.
Well, to avoid misunderstandings, let me clarify what you just saw. I am playing GTA 5 on the Game Boy, but it's not running on the Game Boy. The game is rendered on my PlayStation and streamed to the Game Boy via Wi-Fi. Conversely, if I press a button on the Game Boy, the input is sent back to the PlayStation so I can control the game. This may seem trivial, but an unmodified Game Boy just is not designed to play video or even show full-screen images, as I will explain later. But before we get to this, I should also clarify that this here is a follow-up video to my previous one, because the magic hardware that allows me to stream GTA to an unmodified Game Boy is the Wi-Fi Game Boy cartridge, which I presented last time. In this video here, I will mostly explain technical details at the Game Boy end and finally show a few videos and games that you requested. If you want to understand everything, you should watch the other video first. But if you're just here for the show, sit back, grab some popcorn and enjoy the video. Oh, and as always, I will release the source code and some more technical details on my blog at There Oughta Be. So, Wi-Fi communication and sending data to the Game Boy was already possible in the last video. Do we now just send an animated GIF to the Game Boy? It's more complicated. Let's go one step back and look at how to even draw an ordinary image on the Game Boy, because it turns out that you cannot do it in full screen except for some kind of trick. The thing is that the Game Boy does not have a method to draw individual pixels. It has a so-called Pixel Processing Unit, or PPU, with some very specific drawing functions. Basically, you have a set of numbered background tiles and a so-called tile map that combines these tiles into a background image. Then you have a set of sprites from which you can draw up to 40 freely on top of the background. And there are some additional features, for example to draw scoreboards, and once again I want to recommend the Ultimate Game Boy Talk by Michael Steil if you want to learn more about these. But there's nothing to directly draw specific pixels onto the screen. This is why most Game Boy games have this distinct look. Stuff is arranged on a grid with repeating tiles and players and monsters are moving on top. So in order to draw an arbitrary image, we have to split it into tiles which are each 8 by 8 pixels. With a color depth of 2 bits to make up the 4 shades of grey that the original Game Boy offers, each tile takes up 16 bytes, and we then have to create a tile map that simply puzzles the tiles back together to recreate the original image. Right? Almost. There is a little catch. The tile map only uses 1 byte per tile to define which image should be drawn, so it can only select from 256 distinct tiles. But the Game Boy has a resolution of whopping 160 by 144 pixels, which translates to 20 by 18 tiles. So we require a total of 360 tiles, which incidentally is more than 256. If you look at the title screens of most games, you will notice that usually this means that those screens either reuse several tiles or that they just have a lot of empty space around them. This workaround is okay if you specifically design a title screen for the Game Boy, but not if you want to display arbitrary images or videos. Luckily, there's a well-known workaround for this. You can select the memory range for the background tiles by changing a bit in the display status register. The 256 values of the tile map can either point to the memory address hex 8000 and count upwards from there, or they can point to the address hex 9000 and the bytes are interpreted as signed integers, allowing it to point to 128 tiles after and 128 tiles before that address. Yes, the ones before that address overlap with the other range. This gives us 128 tiles that are only available in one state, 128 tiles in the other state, and 128 tiles that are shared between both states. 384 in total, which incidentally is more than 360. So if you have the data for 360 tiles in memory, you can use a tile map with addresses relative to hex 8000 for the upper half of the screen and addresses relative to hex 9000 for the lower half. Since the PPU draws the image line by line, you can actually register an interrupt that allows you to simply change the display status register halfway through the image to switch to the other address. Now, while this method is known among Game Boy developers, you still do not often see full-screen images because the capacity of a cartridge is rather limited. In our case, with the Wi-Fi cartridge, that's not an issue, but each image of the video will require different tile data, so we ideally want to load those 360 tiles about 25 to 30 times per second. With 16 bytes per tile, that's a total of 5,760 bytes per frame, and at 30 FPS, that would mean 168 kilobytes per second. In the Game Boy world, that's a lot of data. That's about 8 times the entire Tetris game per second. So, no more comfortable C, it's time for some hand-to-hand assembly. I am not the most experienced with assembly code, but I can copy a block of data from one location to another one with 3 repeating lines, which take up a total of 6 CPU cycles. In case of my Wi-Fi cartridge, we always read from the same memory address, which allows me to cut it down to 2 repeating lines with only 4 cycles. If someone knows a faster way on the original Game Boy, which does not support DMA on its video RAM, please let me know. So for 5760 bytes, I would need roughly 23,000 CPU cycles. For the 1 MHz CPU, this would allow for more than 40 frames per second, if it wasn't for another limitation of the Game Boy. You see, the PPU of the Game Boy draws the image like an old CRT would do it, line by line, from left to right and from top to bottom. But while it is doing so, it needs to read from video RAM and does not allow the CPU to write to it. The CPU is only allowed to write to video RAM in a short period between each line, called H blank, and during a slightly longer period between each frame, called V blank. Without going into all the technical details, when only drawing background tiles, I get 68 microseconds or 71 cycles for each of the 144 lines and about an additional millisecond or 1140 cycles during V blank, in which I can transfer the tile data. If you punch in those numbers, that makes a total of 11,364 cycles per frame. So even if I manage to use them all perfectly, the 23,000 cycles for the full image do not quite fit into 2 frames. I need 3 frames per image, and since the Game Boy refreshes 60 times per second, I end up with 20 FPS for my video stream. On the bright side, using 3 frames per image now leaves some headroom and allows us to organize the transfer nicely. One tile with 16 bytes fits neatly into H blank, and so I can transfer 1 tile per line using only H blank and consistent 16-byte packages. In contrast to my previous video, this also allows the ESP to send these 16 bytes without waiting for interrupts right after the Game Boy sends one initial read request just before H blank begins. This way, even with the entire Game Boy code written in highly optimized assembly, the ESP8266 can keep up with the data transfer. Oh, and all that headroom allows us to send 1 byte from the Game Boy to the ESP every 3 frames when one image is complete to synchronize them in case something goes out of sync. This can be done regardless of video RAM access, and we will use this later for a back channel. But that's enough theory for now. Let's fire up a Python script that takes any video source from FFmpeg, reorders the bits to match the tile data order, and streams it to the cartridge. It's finally time to look at some of your requests. Okay, what do we have here?
Dude, you lost me.
The way it was meant to be
couldn't.
seen. Well, at least the color scheme seems quite right.
You know what though? I think that, you know what though? That's huge because you could look. This is my only point. So I appreciate this gentleman, dude. I couldn't keep up with you. I'm sorry. You lost me. You lost me really early. I tried to keep up with your numbers, but I found that I couldn't keep up with the numbers. So let me see here. So CNET, there was a game. I think it was like CNET Game Boy. Was it? I know it's not. I know it wasn't a Game Boy, but like, I think this is it. Yeah, I think that's it. Let me just make sure. That's my boy, Brian Tong. 5 years ago, sir. 415, play. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Okay, no. So this is what I'm talking about. This is why it's important.
Entire lives.
To me, in my opinion. This is just my.
Are the moments. Full time, part time, in or out of uniform. How many moments can you give?
Yeah, baby. Send it.
I came on paddleboarding and a hard wind is pushing me out to sea.
It's pushing you out to sea?
I can't fight the wind anymore.
We're going to send for a water rescue, okay, sir?
Thank you.
Dude, that's fucking
My
awesome.
childhood was surrounded with Game Boy games. I don't really have a Game Boy that works anymore. But that's where the analog pocket could be your ticket back to your cartridge past. The Analog Pocket is this handheld that's been anticipated for a while. It's finally here. Well, sort of, if you pre-ordered it. For a lot of people, it's still really hard to get. And it's a handheld.
Oh, that looks so good. That looks so good.
Super device.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited for this. I really am.
Specifically, if you were the type of person who has collected a lot of old cartridges and doesn't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing though, because I don't have any. Oh, and that dude, I was so obsessed with my original Game Boy. I remember this is how much of a douche I was when I was a kid. So I played a lot. I think I played Madden. I can't remember. Don't quote me. I know I played Madden for Super Nintendo, I believe. But I played baseball. It was like baseball. There's a bunch of sports games, but I remember I would get so pissed, and then I would just like hit my Game Boy on the table. Like the game cartridges had so many dents because I would get so pissed. I would get so pissed. So I'm grateful that like there's this Wi-Fi cartridge, or like just even you mean this gentleman, he came up with an idea. I'm sure it will continue to evolve, and this is going to blossom, I think, into something where it turns into its own thing. Like it's almost like it can't be bottled up anymore. It's almost like the original design, the original thing was so good that it's just there's no way to contain it. I don't. It's
do with them and feels nostalgic. Analog has other hardware that they're well known for. Recreations of the Super NES and the Genesis, and they're really beautiful, and they work.
That
with
looks so
HDMI.
cool.
The Analog Pocket
my
is kind of the
gosh.
same idea. This is a bright 3.5-inch LCD display that's high resolution. It charges with the USB-C.
So nice.
Connects with your TV with a dock over HDMI, and it plays a bunch of games, but specifically Game Boy games. Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and with adapters, Sega Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket, and Atari Lynx. It doesn't play DS games, just letting you know. Who isn't this for? Well, I mean, if you're a handheld gaming person, and there are a lot of gaming handhelds out there, including the Nintendo Switch, this may not be that system for you because it's not internet connected.
You just wait, sir. I think somebody thought about that. No, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I'm going to end this. I got to see what Dami's up to. But I don't want this to be too long, but I appreciate everyone. I just shout out to CNET. Shout out to this gentleman. I don't remember his name. I'm sorry. I'm so bad with names. Here we go. Bam. Shout out to you, Scott Stein. Thank you. Shout out to the original OG that created that. There ought to be, sir. Shout out to the person. Oh, wait, that's my video that I'm uploading. Whistles. Shout out to Whistles, bro. Shout out to Whistles existing. Shout out to Scott Stein again. That's how you know this is it. This is, oh, and then shout out to all the people on the side there that would have shown me as well. I mean, you know what? I haven't watched this. I'm going to watch this. And I haven't watched, shout out to Wolf Den. Shout out to Metal Jesus Rocks. Dude, shout out to CNET. Shout out to PlayStation. Shout out to IGN. Shout out to anyone who's just has an opinion but is able to take a moment and say it in a positive way. Thank you. I love you.